Musicians who want to make movies, the first thing you need to know is that lyrics are dialogue. Music is a camera. When you are writing lyrics, you are perfecting the art of using very simple language in new and unusual combinations to tell a story, to create a setting, and to convey an emotion. Music is the vehicle by which you use to paint pictures in people's minds of places and events and journeys through beautiful places, scary places, adventurous, high energy places, quiet places. So the first thing I want to tell you is you have been preparing to make movies for your whole life. And you're going to find if you're an effective songwriter, you're going to be an effective filmmaker. The question starts with, how do you write a story? I have tried many different approaches in my screenwriting. Some work, some don't. It's okay to write screenplays about things that you know. Take a story from your life. But I would definitely tell you, don't worry about the facts. Never let facts get in the way of a good story. Combine characters in your life into one character. Combine events into your life into one shorter sequence. Don't worry about timelines. Squeeze time events together because you're trying to tell a bigger story in a short amount of time. And that means you're going to have to take liberties with facts. Now, you also may want to write a story that was not based on your life. But even in that, you're going to find that in order for you to write effectively, you're going to have great empathy for all your characters. So it's not a surprise that your characters are based upon people that you've met in your life, at least partly, or a couple of people. Maybe they were close friends. Maybe they were just passing figures that, like the bouncer at a nightclub that you thought was really interesting. Doesn't matter. What does matter is that you start charting out what your story is. I think for your first screenplay, it's okay to make a bazillion mistakes. I did. My first screenplay, I just started writing the scenes and the dialogue and then didn't have any idea where it was going, and then I found an ending. The problem with this method is I had 18 rewrites in a screenplay that ultimately was not that effective because I kept trying to fix the story in rewriting. The next screenplay I tried writing was based almost entirely on one single evening in my life, and I animated it with stories of supernatural experiences or weird scientific stuff. That actually won some awards. That's because in that instance, I knew how the story began and I knew how it ended because it happened to me over one evening, even though I embellished the facts greatly. At least I knew where I was ending up. And that can work. But as you progress as a storyteller, you can't keep telling the same story over and over. Eventually, I had to learn to do it the right way, which is much more exhausting, much more difficult, but gives me far better control over the story and allows me to pivot and change things quickly. And that is what they call an outline. There's a lot of ways to do an outline. You're going to read about index cards or extemporaneous thoughts in a page that you eventually fill up and formulate. There's no one way to do an outline. So what is an outline? An outline is basically a series of events that take place over the time of your story, but there is no dialogue ever. You might say, Mary tells Billy that she has to go home. But that's not really dialogue. That's an important piece of information that drives the narrative forward. So you're not actually writing the conversation, you're writing a quick gist about what the conversation is. And eventually you're going to fill up pages and pages of events that happen in your story. The screenplay I'm working on right now, I thought was originally going to be a period piece about a ghost. And I've been working on this outline for, I don't know, like a year on and off while I work in other films. And now it's set 10 years ahead of time and there's no ghosts. How did that happen? Because as I began writing the outline and running up against problems trying to solve in the story, and also being aware of what was on in my life and current events, I began to realize that, oh, my character really can't be in this situation because I need to make this other situation more in the forefront. And slowly over time, my initial idea of writing a ghost story became more of a strange scientific zombie weirdness story that I'll explain later. And that's perfectly normal. Because as you know, as a songwriter, not every song works. And a lot of times you may write a really great verse and a really great chorus, and you start pounding that into a song, and suddenly the verse and chorus that you wrote, you have to cut because they no longer effectively work in the song that you ended up writing. That's a natural progression. So the trick is, you just simply start by plotting out the things that happen to your characters and allowing yourself the freedom to go back and remove those situations which no longer solve the problem, and we'll get more into that later, and replace it with other situations that do solve the problem. Much like music, writing a story is a series of problem solving. You have a situation where you may have a character working at a fast food joint because you went to a fast food joint once and you were very inspired by it. But as you write the story, you feel like, oh, this character working at a fast food joint makes her kind of weak and I need her to be stronger. So all of this stuff that's in here doesn't really help her appear strong. So I can't have her in a fast food joint. I need to have her leading a protest in the street. Same character, but now this particular setting allows me to move the story quicker. Now, can she also work at a fast food joint? Sure. But I think it's important in this particular example to remember that I only have 90 minutes to tell a story. And how can I best get my character to appear strong and motivated through a story? Just like in songwriting, the voice or the person singing has to appear strong and motivated in the song. Nobody wants to listen to an unmotivated singer. Nobody wants to hear an unmotivated lyric. And the same as in film. So start by just writing down a list of events, keeping your locations as simple as possible, maybe 4 or 5 major set pieces, keeping your characters as small as possible. You can always add characters later, but it's better just to focus on a half dozen characters and just make those people deliver your story as best as you can. And do not write the dialogue. Just write the story. And once you have the whole story outlined, then tell your story to your friends. If you can hold their attention and they go, wow, that's a great story, then you're ready to start writing dialogue. And if they're not having that experience, you need to go back and figure out, where in my story can I change or cut or move around to better pace the overall feel, so that I end up where I need to be at the end with a good bang. Always leave them with a bang. All right.